Today on the table we have a Luger P08. That is its most common name. It was also called the pistol parabellum. It was it was actually designed by George Luger in 1898, and then it was produced from 1898 to 1949. It's most commonly used as the Luger, or known as the Luger, and it was used in World War I and World War II. That is, again, where most people would recognize it from. It was in service in the German military from 1904 actually to 1953, and it was manufactured by a couple different brands. There was the DWN, which I will not try to pronounce what that stands for. There was an Imperial Arsenal, there was Simpsons, there was HKW, which was a Waffenburg, and then Mauser, which is what this one is here sitting on the table. Then there was Vickens, and then actually a different Waffenburg. I think that one was in Berlin, specifically, that one was made. They made around 3 million of them, so obviously that was quite a lot. With all the different models, they made the 3 million of them. This one, which is a standard model, the total length of it is 8.7 inches, and the barrel length on it is, with this one is a 3.9 inch barrel. Actually, yes, this is the 3.9 inch barrel, because there was a 4.7 and then a 7.9 as well. And we'll go over those here in a little bit later, but this is the standard 3.9 inch barrel. It came in two different cartridges. It was a 7.65 by 21, and then a 9mm. It's a 9 by 19 parabellum, which is the other caliber that they came in. It is a toggle locked action, and we'll kind of go over what that means. It has a very, very unique action on it. And this one is pretty old. This one, you can see here, it actually has a date of 1936 stamped on it. And this was a German used one. It's all German proof marks as well on it here. And I guess before we go into a little bit more history about it, we can just look at this one per se. I wanted this one because, one, it was a really good deal. It's all original. The only thing that's not original about it is it does have a Luger magazine, but it is not the magazine that went with this pistol. If you are shopping for these and are looking for them, you want to make sure that you can find all the ones that are stamped with their serial numbers in each part, which this one has. Its serial number is stamped everywhere on it, including the grips as well, if we take the grips off. But it does not have its serial number stamped on the magazine. So this is not the magazine that went originally with this pistol. It is a military magazine. A Navy magazine would have three little rings on the inside. Those are specific for the Navy ones, and we'll go over what the difference is between the Navy and then the standard military ones are. It does have a goofy action, which I'll explain here in just a second. It's just a different mechanism compared to like your standard automatic pistol. It does have this magazine, by the way, is 8 rounds, so you can see it's an 8-round magazine, and then this is the 7.65 one, so you can see here. But that is the 8-round magazine for it. It was actually, so a couple cool things is that the Luger was first actually adopted by the Swiss military back in 1900. So there's actually a lot of Swiss, the DWMs and a few other manufacturers I mentioned earlier. The Swiss actually started making their own, and you can actually find those online. They're a little bit cheaper than the Mauser ones are as well if you're out shopping for one. And then the German Navy adopted them in 1906, and then the German Army adopted them actually last in 1908. It was basically the standard service pistol for a lot of different countries. Switzerland, then eventually Portugal, the Netherlands, Brazil, Bolivia, and Bulgaria. It had been basically their police pistol and military pistol in most of those countries for basically most of the early 19th century. It was used in like a few different modified forms, which we'll go over later. There was a shorter version, like more of a Navy version, and then a much more longer artillery version as well. And then the US actually, before they were figuring out what they wanted to do with the pistol that became the US pistol in 1911, they actually were looking at these as well. So DWM, one of the manufacturers, back in 1901, they actually sent a few Lugers to the United States for testing to see if the U.S. military would want to use these pistols in a 9mm fashion for the U.S. military. They did test well. They ended up ordering 1,000 pistols and 200,000 rounds. But then the issue is that most of the military, like in the military academy, and then with the soldiers themselves, back then there wasn't really semi-automatic pistols. It was all revolvers. Think of cowboys and, much earlier in the 1800s. So they really preferred their 38 long Colt revolvers. So the use of the Luger, or this model P08, was then not adopted by the U.S. military because everybody was more preferential to those revolvers. So that's kind of a cool fact. It would have been kind of odd if, it would have been weird if that was the case, if we ended up having to use these, or if, these were used in our military. So we'll go over the action here real quick. So it is a toggle action. So I can show you here. It's actually very, very resilient to mud and, just mud and the elements because of this odd action that it has. It has like this jointed arm, and then it locks like this, as you can see, as opposed to like, just a semi-automatic pistol where, it's just the spring on the inside and then the rail slides back. So after the round is fired, the barrel toggles back like you can see here, and then due to the recoil, and then it locks back here, and then obviously it goes back forward as it ejects around here out of the top, which is kind of interesting. As you can see the magazine in there as well. And I'll take the magazine out. I guess this is our safety check, so we can obviously see it isn't loaded as well. So what happens is that the barrel strikes the frame, it stops, as you can see here, extracting the round, and then ejecting it, and then the toggle and the breech assembly travel forward under the tension, and another round is loaded back in the magazine. Now these had to have like a higher pressure round to be shot through them in order for this mechanism to work. If there was a lower pressure round, then they would actually jam, and there would be I can't remember what they called it. It was I can't remember the name, but when it would jam with a lower pressure round, it would the casing would get stuck in here. Like chimney basically is what it would do. These were the other crazy thing about them is, like, this pistol is from 1936. It's almost 100 years old. So these were manufactured in Germany and Switzerland, like I mentioned before, but they were made to the craziest tolerances, like very, very close tolerances, and they were handmade with, at the time, the highest quality materials that they had available that day. And that's why they have such a long service life, and why even now, this one being as old as it is, and you can see here the magazine's the grip is a little bit loose on this panel. This one's better. And that's why they're, so well made, and they handle so well. And they did shoot very well. I have not shot this one yet, but they don't have as much recoil as you'd think, even with this, wacky mechanism on the back. So they did come in. So this is the standard model, but they did come in 2 other models. There was a Navy model, and it had a 5.9-inch barrel. So, and then it had for its sights on the top, there was 2 positions. There was 100 meters or 110 yards, and then 200 meters, which is 220 yards for the rear sight. And then the other one, which is a little tougher to find, there's an artillery one. Is you might see them online, but it had a much longer barrel. It was a 7.9-inch barrel, and then it had an 8-position rear sight on the back of it, actually, so you could shoot for up to, I think, around 800 meters, which is about 870 yards, and it would have, a shoulder stock. This one, you can see, has the mechanism for a shoulder stock to be on the back of it, so you could, hold it like a rifle. And then the artillery ones, you can actually get like a drum magazine, so you wouldn't be limited to just your 8 rounds. You would have a drum mag on it. And then I think I mentioned before, on the Navy ones, if you're shopping for one, The Navy ones, if you're looking for a true Navy one, it will have, like I said, the magazine that goes correct with the Navy pistols will have the 3 loops or the 3 rings on the inside of this little, you know, the bottom of the magazine here. So when you're looking for those, look for that. And then you can see the serial number is stamped here, but it's not the serial number that matches this one, like I said before. But yeah, so that's the history of the Luger. They're very cool. I have 2 of them now. Both of mine are actually from 1936. You can see here. So yeah, it's just super cool. They weigh a pretty good amount of weight. But they're not cheap to find, no matter how hard you look. But they're just super cool. But let me know what else you want to see. We are going to actually go over the P08, which is the pistol that came out after this one. We're going to do that here in another video. And thanks again for watching.